offered.
Mm-hmm.
BOP's collaborative inventory intelligence technology is helping many retailers and CPGs such as Colgate-Palmolive, PepsiCo, Coty, and Duracell avoid lost sales, markdowns, and spoilage by streamlining their next-gen collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment process. Learn more at bops.ai.
If you think about all those various verticals, air traffic, package, QSR, retail, et cetera, has a lab and you personally made any different decisions on where you want to focus priorities from a lab perspective? Because you now see there's some things that if we do once, we can reapply 4 different times. Because I think that would be helpful. I think the biggest value of that is you're getting input from 4 different verticals. You may say, hey, this is really something I'm going to focus on based on the fact that all 4 of them need this done.
Yes. I can think of not that exciting base example, and I can think of something that's a little better. So like one thing that a lot of people, when they go into an RFID program, almost everybody right off the gate, like we learn about the things we can touch and feel. Okay. So tags and readers, they get tags and readers.
Yep.
In my mind, tag and reader performance is a solved problem. Like, there's a lot of tags out there. There's a lot of readers out there. You decide what kind of environment you want to set up. And we have, when I say we, mean the whole industry has invested in robust ways to benchmark RFID tags and for performance. And then those playbooks, there's playbooks in QSR space, there's playbooks in retail, there's playbooks in aviation. We looked at playbooks in, packaging places that kind of builds out too. So there's a very known path to travel to where you can figure out tags and reader performance. So a lot of times people get hung up and they spend a lot of time worrying about like getting the tags to scan. And what we tell them a lot of times between industries is, man, the tags are not your problem. The tag reading is going to be the easy part. What is going to be your issue is when you get all this data, like you are going to have to clean that. You're going to have to aggregate that. You're going to have to figure out how to drive updates with that. Like all the little things that are on Excel a lot of times or in a database or not as easy to touch and feel. That's where the hard work happens. Like I said in the beginning of the conversation, RFID is not a technology problem. RFID is an accounting system. And I think that's what we're trying to drive towards. And I think, the more exciting version of that, we just had a big conversation with the exec committee about space because we've dabbled with NASA and some of the other space operations folks. And actually, I'm going to DC this week, and there's a thing coming up there there's a lot of driver in space operations because you got a lot of commercial stations that are popping up there. We're talking about lunar surface now and pre-staging equipment, inventory and things up there. There is a full supply chain that is about to open up in orbit and beyond that doesn't exist yet. Like right now, stuff goes up and stuff comes down pretty much. And you're seeing some of this in the news with Boeing sent the Starliner up there and it connected with the ISS, and they got, SpaceX is going to bring them back, and they already sent the module back down. And 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was all like it was NASA or it was Russia or the EU, but now it's more of there's an industry there.
Right.
And I think, we have to establish standards and capabilities in that area. So it's a smaller space. Sounds weird to say. It's a smaller industry, but a lot of the things that can be learned there can be applied to these other industries as well. So the question was like, how much time do we spend trying to stand up the new to this new industry and support that versus focusing on a lot of the terrestrial problems that we have here now, and how can those things support one another? So yeah, it's fun problem to have.
Fascinating. Well, let's head back to retail because this is really more of a retail subject. So one of the things that we have always talked about is RFID allows you to know what you have very, very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Location, especially with a handheld device, has always been, it's here somewhere, but who knows where, unless you're using like the Find It application. And I'm not sure if you've ever used the Find It application native, but it's not very intuitive. You got to really know where is it beeping and which way am I supposed to go. I'd love it for it to go up, right, to the left. It's right there, but it doesn't do that. So how are retailers figuring out product location? Obviously, there's fixed infrastructure solutions that allow you to do that, but product location, like, is it right here or is it right here within about a foot or a couple feet away? How are retailers combating that? Because that seems like the next big opportunity beyond knowing what you've got, knowing exactly where it's located.
Right. I think retailers in a warehouse, I mean, WMS systems will define locations and different put locations and stuff like that. Right. So those, I think, are more obvious, I think, in terms of how they do those. In a retail store, one of the things I like to say is, like, when we started this in 2005, most retailers, I don't think very many at all, differentiated between backroom and front room inventory. They just had inventory on the system. That was the whole initial win with these RFID systems, is understanding the difference between back and front, and then using that to drive replenishment. And that gets forgotten along the way, but it was true. That's been a change. Now I think retailers will have front room inventory, back room inventory. They'll have to a category or department, like men's jeans or something like that. And then if they're really advanced, then they'll have inventory to a mod or to a particular rack location or something like that too. Generally, most retailers that we work with will have front room, back room inventory. That's the stuff that's readily available. Most of them will try to re-merchandise stuff back to the proper category or department area where it's supposed to be, but most of them don't have visibility to the individual mod.
Right.
They know where it's supposed to be on planogram, but like what's actually there, we think we may be close. So I think a lot of what we do, because inventory inaccuracy is still rampant, and I think we're forgetting. We constantly have to remind people like how poor their inventory accuracy is for a lot of these items. Just getting them to the level to where they trust the back room and the front room inventory is 90% of the battle, because once they get that down, then re-merchandising is something we can work on, but we can't sell it if we don't have it. So, I mean, customers can generally find stuff if you can get it like at least close, but if you don't have it at all, they can't buy it. So whenever it comes to online replenishment or in-store availability, that's the key piece. Using RFID to get down to a specific mod, I still think we have a ways to go on that. I think that that really relies very heavily on that supplier compliance and the execution piece. Okay. And also I think just to build, I've seen overhead systems. I know you two have too, Mike, and how we've had retailers will come to us with 3 different overhead systems, and they'll say, okay, this one can do location accuracy to 1.2 meters, and this one can do location accuracy to 1.8 meters. So 1.2 is better. And I was like, all right, so what's your business case that 1.2 is going to save you more money than 1.8? Right now, you don't have a system that can handle either, right? So like, you can give people XY coordinate locations of inventory all day long. They can't use it. So, trying to get them to focus on like, what does it mean? What is their core inventory accuracy? Do they have their high level location accuracy right, so that they're operating based on and making replenishment and purchasing and sales decisions based on that? Then worry about that final mile merchandising piece, because we have seen retailers get obsessed with merchandise location, and they lose the forest for the trees, or or vice versa. I don't know. Like we lose track of the big picture because we're so damn worried about making sure that this pair of pajamas is on this rack versus that rack over there. Meanwhile, we're sitting on a 55% PI accuracy across the department, and we're losing sales left and right. But we're throwing a bunch of resources at trying to figure out how to wand down to one specific area. So I think, making sure that we're focusing big picture first, then narrowing down into that specific location piece.
Yeah, what you have is critical. If you don't have what you have at a very high level, you're in trouble anyway. But I can hear Dr. Hargrave in my mind going, yeah, but BOPUS says I got 3 here somewhere, but I can't find them. And I know they're there. I've done a cycle count, and they're there somewhere, but I can't find them for a customer. I'm disappointing through a BOPUS. The industry's got to figure that out, because from my perspective, if a wand won't get you there, then obviously fixed infrastructure can, but that's extremely expensive. So there's got to be somewhere in the middle for those people who are trying to get location.
I don't think fixed infrastructure is nearly as expensive as people think it is. I think what fixed infrastructure suffers from is a lack of a strong cost model that's consistent across the board. Okay. But, people, like, how much a handheld costs. I mean, I can go online and buy a handheld for, $1,200, $1,500. Yep. Okay. I know how much it is. I know how to use it. Yep. That's a very simple cost model. How many hours do I spend wandering around with that thing? It's a lot, right?
Sure.
So, and you talk about fixed infrastructure. Well, a lot of people, they do it by square foot. Are they doing it by number of units? Is it the type of inventory? It's difficult and it's tangible. So you see all that stuff hanging up there and you have people say, well, that looks expensive. It's like, well, ask how much it costs before you just assume it's not going to work. Because if you're going to spend 75, 100 grand to light up a store, it's going to last you 4 or 5 years versus, 4 or 5 grand for handhelds. You got to think about that labor component piece that comes in there too, because that's where the true savings of value. And then you're going to get better reads out of an overhead than you are on a handheld for the most part anyway, just because it's always on. So,
what's ironic is one of the first, and as well, because you've seen it before, when you take somebody who's literally been say I've got a 10,000 square foot, apparel pad right here, and I make somebody count everything one by one by one by barcode scanning, then I give them an RFID reader and they go, my world just got rocked. This is the best thing in the world. This is a lifesaver, et cetera. Until they're about 8 months into it and wanting that pad, for 20 minutes a day or whatever they do, they go, this is a lot of work. I got to do it. Wait a minute. We're not making you count it by hand, but suddenly it's a lot of work to be able to do that. So I think the fixed infrastructure also says, take that human element out. The human element's the most important customer facing you've got. Don't have your humans collecting data for your systems. Allow them to react to what the system says and free them up. Now, some of them really love doing that kind of stuff because they really don't want to work with people. They just want to do this task all the time. But I look at some of these stores that are trying to do RFID wanding across a literally 70,000 square foot space. My gosh, you're going to have rotator cuff surgery at the end of that. So,
yeah, how quickly we forget,
Oh,
so I growing up, I'd complain. Dad would go out there and we put up a little bit of fence. It's hot, man. I got to get back in the air conditioner. I need some water. It's like, man, your granddad would be out there 12, 13 hours a day farming. They had no air conditioning to go back to, right? So you don't know what hot means. So it's like, yeah, you're right. So, but it's still, you're dang hot whenever you're sitting out there in the sun at the time. So I feel like we do forget the pain of the past a lot of times for these counts and things, but I do feel like that we have to focus on those core fundamental problems.
Yep.
Our inventory accuracy as an industry in retail sucks and it's not getting better.
Yep.
So we have to invest in systems that can make that better, and we cannot take our foot off the pedal when it comes to supplier compliance and execution. When we get chasing shiny objects over here with some of the location stuff on some of these projects. 100%. And then we also have to make sure that we are continuously benchmarking against efficacy. So to your point, Mike, when you forget about why we're doing this after 6 months, you can go back and say, well, 6 months ago, we weren't selling this stuff because our inventory accuracy was here and here's where we are now. And you kind of have to continually remind yourself why you're doing it as a retailer, what the value is.
Yeah. Hey, I got 2 more quick questions and then we're going to kind of wrap this thing up. The one big question is, I'm seeing more interest than ever, and not even talk about quick service restaurants or anything like that. I'm seeing more interest in the RFID in the food space, specifically for 2 reasons. Number one, knowing exactly what we have, just like apparel or electronics or anything like that, but also using the new, tag data standards from GS1 to be able to actually put a date on when the product was either manufactured or put out, et cetera, for markdown purposes. Are you seeing the same trend? And if so, what's the lab involvement in terms of helping the industry understand that use case?
I am, and I am seeing that trend. A couple of things that's good is when we talk about different data standards or for expiration of food and stuff like that, we don't need special tags. I mean, you need, most of these tags can handle higher memory data anyway. Yep. So it may not be if you're doing the very high memory stuff, but you don't have to re-engineer the whole performance perspective of things. A lot of these current market tags will work just fine. So you don't have to really, the readers aren't going to read things differently, things like that. The product itself is hard to tag because it's food. And then the margin in food is limited. So again, I think that's going to be a hard thing for some people to get around. We'll work on it. The data itself.
One more quick add. In apparel, electronics, et cetera, the supplier typically pays for the cost of the tag. In food, typically that product is potentially going to be tagged at the store. So the retailer absorbs the cost of the tag and the labor to collect it, et cetera. So the business model becomes much tighter.
It does, and it becomes much. When the supplier's not paying for it, things are a different story, right? So like when the retailer's paying for it, it's kind of more elegant because I guess in a way the person who's getting the value is paying for it, so it makes it much easier to do an ROI model because you know how much you're paying to do this and you know how much you're making back out of it. So it's a more direct conversation.
Yep.
Now the data itself, I'm of two minds on that. Moving to a higher memory data standard means that some of these retailers are going to have two different RFID data standards in the same store. My gut just screams at me every time we look at this and says, we do not have everything locked down as much as we'd want on the first one. We do not need to complicate this by adding a second data standard to the space.
Okay.
However, I do think, going back to your questions at the beginning, Mike, once we start looking at date and expiration, we are truly using the value of the serialized unit level inventory. So we're not just batching this thing up to on-hand updates. We're really extracting true value on a per unit basis, which I really like. So I am, I don't want to turn this into a VHS Betamax situation, with RFID data standards, and I don't think we'll get there, but I do know that it can be hard to create systems that can handle both of those on the back end. Because again, I'm not worried about tags and readers. I'm worried about the data on the accounting side, on upstream, and making sure that we have structures that can use and ingest that is what I worry about more than anything.
Last question. There's no segue away from this one. We're just going to lay this one out.
Mm-hmm.
The Auburn RFID Lab has a cadence right now of 2 major events per year, face-to-face. One is the Supplier Summit, which I think was 2 years ago when you first did it, blew away everybody's expectations in terms of the number of people who came and what they got out of it, et cetera. You and I had this funny bet, which says a year later, you didn't think it would be good at all. I said, I think it's going to be the first year. And I think I won that bet.
Yeah.
But also, so you've got that event. And in the fall, you have a traditional kind of RFID board meeting for board members. The question becomes, I guess, do you see these continuing to trend? Do you see us every spring having a supplier summit and every fall having a board meeting, either at Auburn or somewhere else? And if so, is that what people could start counting on from an Auburn perspective?
Yeah, I guess 2 things I can announce here. So one is, and I think you know this and some other people do, we're getting a new building.
Yep.
So it's not the one behind me in the background here, but like the
pretty nice building.
There's a research park here in town. So there's been a lot of activity. The Board of Trustees just approved that, and it was announced in the media a week or 2 ago. So the RFID Lab is moving into our own space, which we need because we're busting at the seams.
So let's stop right there. What is the square footage of your current facility?
Square footage of our current is around 13,500.
And you're moving to
the space we're moving to. We're looking at is around 45,000 square feet initially, with the option to add another 60. So moving up to about 100,000, depending on how many industry verticals put in there, and that's needed because a lot of this is warehouse focused. Yeah.
And there's 2 facts there. Number 1, you've delivered on the expectations of the industry, and number 2, the Auburn Board of Trustees have a lot of faith in what the future is for that. I mean, it's the only reason they give you the more space.
I think so.
Congratulations to you. It's tremendous.
Well, that's all of us, man, because this is something that we've been working on together. Like we're not selling anything at the lab except the students. So I think we've been able to help drive that, which is good. But for next year, what we're going to do, next year is the 20th anniversary of the lab.
Yep.
So we've got a lot of activities planned. So ideally a groundbreaking for that new space. We may have one earlier than that for the university, but for the industry partners, we want to have groundbreaking and showcase that new space. The supplier summit, we're thinking about expanding that up a bit too. I'm trying real hard. You mentioned that supplier summit, like the second one, I thought we were going to have like 50 to 100 people. We opened it up with 200 and it was gone like within 2 days. And I'm seeing how much of a venue space we can get here in the Auburn area, because if we're going to do the full groundbreaking and all these other industry stuff and a 20-year celebration, I think we really want to kind of have a big show and tell party and bring everybody.
You've got a football stadium, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. 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 We're going to put every single person who's ever said the word RFID in there and fill up section 1. No. But no, I think we're working on that piece too. And I think next year is going to be a big year for us. So we're looking forward to having our friends down.
Got it. And you've got a big board meeting coming up in October, just a few weeks here. Is there any big agenda items that you want to share with the group before we wrap this thing up?
We're trying to do a little bit more focus on some of the retailers that don't get as much attention on the retail space. There's a lot of vertical retailers and mall retailers who have been chugging along and doing a pretty nice job of updating their systems. Nice. And we don't hear from them as much sometimes. And I'm trying to get a little bit more of a refocus on the things that we don't see, and then planning for next year.
Awesome. Well, Justin, I've asked you a lot of questions. There's a lot of cool stuff coming down the road. Everything from leveraging this up the supply chain to food to multiple sensors to a brand new facility that you've gotten the university to invest in. Anything that I did not ask you that I should have? What's on your mind that we probably should have brought up in terms of what's new and different, et cetera, that you want to share, or any other closing comments that you got?
Man, I think you covered it pretty well, Mike. That serialized inventory piece is crucial. And, if any retailer or brand is listening to this now, and you do not if you do not know who in your org is in charge of serialized inventory, then you need to either assign somebody or figure out who it is, because there is a future of retail that is coming that is based on serialized inventory strategy. And there are some retailers and some brands that are pretty advanced on that. And there's some of them that are still thinking like the dark days of we're going to do batch level, quantity level inventory on a sales floor in the back room. And those days are coming to a close fast. So folks have an opportunity to they don't have to be on the bleeding edge, but they can get ahead of the curve, or at least beyond the curve. But we cannot be sitting here scanning 1D barcodes in another 5 or 6 years if you expect to stay in business in a world that expects a 24-hour availability of products to their customers. And I think that's what we're trying to help support.
Awesome. Well, Justin, once again, thank you so much for your time. Every time we talk, whether we're on a podcast or not, we always have a couple topics that we didn't even know we were going to get into, and they're always very insightful. The one I wrote down, just so you know, the one that I wrote down is the difference from my perspective of an RFID of discovery versus validation. I've never heard that before. And I've never really thought about it before, but it's really, really true. Am I trying to discover new stuff, or am I trying to validate what that should be here is here? That's a really good way of being able to think about that. So
well, you got RV and you go camping a lot, Mike, right?
I do.
Okay. So if you got a list, you can check it. You don't forget anything, right?
We have a list. It's actually electronic. Right. Is this done? Is this done? Is this done? Is this done? Because you don't want to drive off with the jacks down. That's not a good thing.
Right. If you don't have a list, and you just have to think it up as you go, you're going to mess up, right? And it's the same thing. Like, that's discovery and validation. If you got a list and you check it, it's way, way easier on everybody than if you just have to kind of remember all these things and build them as you go. Yeah.
100%. Justin, thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And we look forward to the next set of opportunities for Auburn.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Mike. Talk to you soon, man.
Bye-bye.